Welcome, my name is Sonia and I am the Woodland Officer at the Bat Conservation Trust. During this session I'll be talking about UK bats, their ecology and requirements. I will briefly talk about the project's primary target species and go through some of the key management recommendations one should consider when planning any management or any work on trees. Bats are mammals like ourselves, and there are over 1,400 species worldwide. In the UK we have 18 resident bats, with 17 species known to breed here. Our bats are long-lived and can live up to 30 years in the wild. The oldest known bat to us is a 42-year-old Brant's bat. UK bats are nocturnal because their prey is readily available at night and predation is reduced when flying around under the cover of darkness. However, predation can still occur, mainly from cats, which are bats' main predators, and some birds of prey, such as owls. Bats are the only true flying mammal and more closely related to humans than they are to mice. They give birth to one young known as a pup, which is fed on milk. All our UK bats are insectivorous and they'll feed on a variety of invertebrates. UK bats all echolocate to navigate around the wider countryside and find their prey in the dark. They use the rebounding calls from their objects in their environment, such as vegetation or their prey, to create a sound image which tells them where an object is, how far it is, its size, and more. Our bats hibernate during the winter when the food source is low, and many species rely on the same roost year after year. If the roost is in a good condition and retains the right environmental conditions that the bats need, then they will use the roost year after year. And lastly, all our bats have experienced massive declines due to their vulnerability to changes in their environment. This diagram gives you an overview of the bat year. However, note that the bat year varies with species and location. For example, if down south, the weather can become warmer early in the year when compared to up north. Weather each year also changes, so we can experience warm winters and cold springs. This can all affect when bats are awake and mobile. Our bats will give birth at different times during the maternity season. Pipistrelles can give birth early in the maternity season, while Barberstows can give birth later, sometimes as late as early July. It takes 6 weeks before a juvenile bat is fully independent. The key thing to take home from this slide is when planning any woodland or tree work, timing is important. Avoid tree work during the hibernation period and during the maternity season. The least disturbance is in spring and autumn when bats are highly mobile and dependent young are not present. So now I'm going to talk about the project's target bat species. The Barberstow is widespread but rare, found in broadleaf woodlands and uses older trees, veteran trees and deadwood. A woodland specialist that typically roosts, breeds and hibernates in tree crevices and cavities, commonly behind lifted bark. It is under threat due to the loss of habitat, roost sites and connectivity to the countryside, and it is now listed on the first IUCN Red List for British mammals as an imminent risk of extinction. The Beckstein bat is found in southwest England. It favours broadleaf woodland, veteran trees and deadwood. It is another rare woodland specialist that will roost, breed and hibernate in tree crevices and cavities all year round, showing a preference for woodpecker holes. It is under threat due to loss of foraging habitat, roost sites and connectivity to the countryside. The Noctil is our largest British bat. It is a relatively widespread species, found in much of England, Wales and to the southwest of Scotland. It will roost, breed and hibernate in mature deciduous trees, living mainly in rot holes and woodpecker holes. The loss of suitable trees for roosting has contributed to its decline. Trees provide an important habitat for bats throughout the year. For commuting, trees provide safe cover. Most bats are reluctant to leave the cover and protection that features such as tree lines, hedgerows and edge habitat provide, as they move between their roosting grounds and their foraging sites. Fragmentation in the landscape can be a serious issue for our bats. For foraging, trees are a source of food. All UK bats feed exclusively on insects, and because areas of ancient woodland, parkland and trees are rich in insects, they are particularly important to bats as foraging habitats. Even species that do not roost in trees, such as serotine, will nevertheless forage around them. The foraging habits of the various species vary greatly, but there is a general requirement for a steady supply of insects through the season, safe corridors along which to fly between roosts and feeding areas, and a local source of water. For roosting, trees provide shelter to our bats. The project's 3 primary species will use tree roosts all year round and are associated with veteran and ancient trees, including wood pasture. The Noctil, Barberstow and Beckstein bats will make use of natural features such as loose and flaky bark, cavities, cracks and splits, woodpecker holes, knot holes, hollows and cavities, basal cavities and rot holes. They need these features for breeding in the summer and for hibernating in the winter. So what is a roost? A roost is defined as any place used for shelter, even when bats are not present, because they tend to return to the roost year after year. Bats are strongly associated with broadleaf deciduous trees, but any tree with a sufficient hole or cavity may provide a potential roost for our bats. This picture shows the type of features that may provide roosting opportunities for bats. Many of the features that make a tree suitable for roosting are found in mature trees, in particular veteran trees. However, as mentioned before, any tree with a suitable feature could be used by bats. As mentioned before, our three target species will roost in trees all year round, using trees for summer and winter roosts. Therefore, they, like all bat species, are most vulnerable during the summer when dependent young are present and during the winter when they are hibernating. Here are some tree roost examples. Bats will use several roosting sites throughout the year, so they don't restrict themselves to just one tree roost or even one building roost. Old-growth ivy may provide suitable cavities for roosting. Ivy itself only forms a roost location when they have large overlapping limbs, greater than 50 mm diameter. Records show that this type of feature is used as a temporary roost by post-maternity females or solitary males. The following is not exhaustive, but it will give you an idea about some of the features used by our target bat species. The Noctil favours woodpecker holes, but will use rot holes and cavities. The Barberstow favours loose, lifted bark, particularly on oak. It will also use cavities, splits like hazard beams, and fissures. And the Beckstein bat favours woodpecker holes, particularly in oak. All bats are listed as European protected species under the Conservation of Habitats and Species Regulation 2017, so should be considered before any works are carried out. Care is needed when thinking of managing your site so that they don't cause disturbance or destroy any known roosts. Appropriate survey should be carried out prior to any work, i.e. on trees with bat potential should be surveyed, a scoping ground survey first, and if needed, a secondary survey. Always follow good practice and keep a record of your surveys and decisions. For reference, the link to the good practice guidance on managing and protecting woodland wildlife is provided. I'm now going to talk about some management recommendations. Protect all existing confirmed roost sites. Make sure you clearly mark and protect any trees that contain confirmed bat roosts and avoid work around confirmed roost sites to limit disturbance. It is important to retain a variety of trees of different ages to ensure a succession of mature, ancient and dying trees that will provide suitable roosting sites long term. For some species like Barberstow and Beckstein bat, frequent roost switching by the whole colony has been recorded, highlighting the importance of ready supply of suitable roost trees within a territory. For the Barberstow and Beckstein bat, try where appropriate to encourage the prevalence of oak. For both bat species, oak is the most frequently used tree species for tree roosts. Think about creating a good network of habitats used for commuting and avoid isolating from the wider landscape. Ensure these wildlife corridors are unlit. Bats need connectivity to wider landscape in order to reach their foraging grounds. The Barberstow, for example, will forage over open areas and near water and wetland meadows. It can cover a large area in one night in order to reach its foraging grounds, so connectivity to wider landscape is very important. Retain any ancient and veteran trees. Of course, great for roosts, but will also provide feeding opportunities for our target species and other bat species. Also retain areas of dense understory and close canopy in nearby woodland blocks for foraging, which will be beneficial for Beckstein bats and other woodland specialists like the brown long-eared bat. Fencing to keep out deer will allow an understory layer to develop where scrubby growth does not deter them. Enhancement of edge habitat by encouraging native edges with a variety of trees, shrubs and grasses will support a greater diversity of insects and is of high value to many species. Leave overhanging branches and shrubs to provide cover for bats, and ensure any suitable trees with roost potential do not become exposed to avoid changing the environmental conditions around the trees. Do create scallop edges and bays along edges and rides to provide sheltered areas and increase the food supply for many of our bat species. Planting of native trees and/or natural regeneration will provide wooded land for the future. Natural regeneration will ensure trees growing will have some genetic resistance to diseases like ash dieback. Planting trees in sparse areas will improve connectivity to the wider landscape. And in wood pasture where foraging opportunities can be sparse, planting of nectar-rich shrubs in protective enclosures and tree planting should provide foraging opportunities for our bats. Retain and enhance water features to provide greater insect diversity. Planting of native broadleaf trees and shrubs alongside streams, rivers, lakes and other water bodies will provide foraging opportunities, cover and structural diversity. Not only great for foraging, but they can also act as navigational aids and provide safe cover for our bats. So this concludes my presentation on bats. The key points to remember when planning any management of your site are: protect all existing confirmed roost sites, retain potential roost trees, ensure succession or continuity of roosts for the future, create a good network of habitats used for commuting and avoid isolating from the wider landscape, create structure and suitable foraging habitat, and retain standing and fallen deadwood. Do make sure appropriate surveys are carried out prior to any work, i.e. trees with bat potential should be surveyed beforehand. Always follow good practice and keep a record of your surveys and decisions. As well as the good practice guidance link that I provided in the previous slide, more information can be found in the Woodland Wildlife Toolkit, which I've provided a link to on this site. Thank you very much for listening.